And welcome back, my LLs, my fellow real estate investors and fellow real estate enthusiasts. Welcome back to another episode of the Lubari Real Estate Podcast. This is the show where we break down the strategies, the lessons, and the mindset shifts that help you win in the multifamily real estate investing scene. I'm your host and owner, Jason Lubari Odes, and today we're diving into one of the most important principles in this business: protecting your downside. We see it all the time, all right? People get excited about a deal, they see the potential upside, and they rush into it without properly considering what happens when things don't go according to plan. The truth is, the way you protect your downside will determine whether you survive long enough to see the upside. So today we're covering 3 crucial ways to mitigate risk in multifamily investing. Number 1, have strong cash reserves. Number 2, secure long-term debt that fits your business plan. And number 3, make sure your cash flow is from day one. The deal needs to cash flow from day one. And if you don't get things right, you're walking down a tightrope without a safety net. So let's break it all down. Okay, so 1, having strong cash reserves. Let's start with the cash because cash is king. All right. So this is your safety net. It's what keeps you in the game when unexpected expenses pop up, which they always do. So think about it like this. In multifamily investing, you've got tenant turnover, maintenance issues, potential economic downturns, and unexpected capital expenditures. So if you're running on empty with no cushion, one bad quarter can put you in a position where you're forced to sell or refinance under bad terms or even worse, default. You really don't want that. You really don't want that. So a good rule of thumb is 6 to 12 months of operating expenses set aside. Some investors may like to keep even more, especially in volatile markets. But your cash reserves should cover at the minimum your mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, maintenance and repairs, payroll if applicable, which we highly suggest using a professional property manager, and any other fixed expenses. The key here is liquidity. It doesn't matter how much equity you have in a deal if you don't have access to cash when you need it. So during 2020, we saw a lot of investors get caught off guard with rent collections dipping and, eviction moratoriums extended longer than expected. And those who didn't have cash were scrambling. The ones who had that cushion, they rode out the storm. So the lesson: cash reserves aren't optional. They're necessary. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about debt now. So the second key to protecting your downside is getting your debt structure right. And one of the biggest mistakes new investors make is mismatching their loan terms with their business plan. And here's what I mean by that. So if you're planning a 5-year value add play, right? That means your holding period is for 5 years and you plan on selling at the 5th year. But you take out a short-term loan that matures in 3 years. You could be in trouble if the market shifts and you can't refi. So if you're buying a stabilized asset and planning to hold long term, you don't want to be stuck with the short-term bridge loan that forces you to refi or sell before you're ready. All right. So long-term fixed rate debt can be a great way to hedge against a violent market or an unpredictable market. So when interest rates spike, you won't be scrambling to find a lender who will give you favorable terms. Instead, you'll already have locked in and predictable payments, which gives you more control over your financial future. All right, now, this does not mean that bridge loans, the short-term financing is bad. So they have their place, especially in heavy value add deals. But you have to structure it correctly and have an exit plan. So if your plan is to refinance, make sure you've stress tested the numbers for different interest rate environments. And always ask yourself, What happens if rates go up? What happens if lending tightens? Can I still make this deal work? All right. So the lesson in that is your debt should be aligned with your strategy, not just what the lender is offering at the moment. So if you're going to have a 5-year holding period, I suggest getting at least about 7 years of debt on there, 10 if you can. And then worst case scenario, either have a step down built into it, so you won't have, those high yield payments, or have some language in there to where it can be assumable if you sell it. That way, especially if it's at a low interest rate, the next buyer can come in, boom, assume the loan, take over, and you guys are good. Okay. And then lastly, making sure your deal cash flows from day one. And this honestly should be some of the things that we are all as investors thinking about before anything else. So when we run the numbers, that's the first thing that we're looking at. Does it cash flow? Because if not, we don't want it. All right. So let's talk about this critical aspect of protecting your downside. All right, because we all know it's easy to get caught up in the appreciation game, thinking, the market will go up, rents will rise, and I'll make a killing. But here's the thing with that. Appreciation is a bonus, not a strategy. So if a deal doesn't cash flow today, you're gambling on your future, man. Like future market conditions, like those could make it work, but that's not investing. That's speculation. So cash flow gives you staying power. It allows you to ride out the market downturns, because even if the property value fluctuates, right, your income covers your expenses and keeps you in the game. So when a property generates positive cash flow from day one, you have a buffer for unexpected expenses. You have the ability to pay down debt, and you also have, a lower likelihood of being forced to sell at a bad time. Okay, so when you're underwriting your deals, always stress test your numbers. Ask yourself, what happens if vacancy increases? Always make sure that you play with your economic vacancy. So what I do personally is I make sure that I have at least 10% economic vacancy. So then that way it's good. It's good. If it works at 10%, it can hold out. So 10% is that's my stress test for it. All right. Also think about what happens if expenses rise unexpectedly. They kind of are now. Have you seen the price of eggs? Jeez. Or, think of, can the deal still support itself even if rent growth slows? Slowing is better than flat rents, but these are some things that you really got to think of. And if the answer is no, then you need to reconsider. Never force a deal to work by tweaking assumptions to make the numbers look good on paper. Okay? Because cash flow isn't just nice to have. It's your first line of defense against your downturns. Okay, so let's recap this. All right, protecting your downside in multifamily real estate comes down to 3 key things. Number 1, having strong cash reserves, so you can handle unexpected challenges without being forced into a bad decision. Number 2, securing long-term debt that fits your business plan, so you don't get caught in a bad refinance or forced to sell. And number 3, making sure the deal cash flows from day one, so you can weather downturns and hold on to your asset long enough to realize the upside. Because at the end of the day going in, fifth flow. And real estate investing isn't just about making money. It's about staying in the game long enough to win big. So if you protect your downside, you put yourself in a position where you don't just survive, but you thrive. And so now we move on to my favorite part of the episode, where we talk about what real estate can do for you. Saturday was National Margarita Day. I had quite a few margaritas, and the margaritas had me, and that's how that went. I also celebrated a good friend. He's moving on to do bigger and better things with his life and his career, and I'm proud of him. So it's all about taking care of people. And yes, tequila was also involved. Well, that's it for today's episode. If you found this valuable, make sure that you subscribe, leave a review, hit that like button for me. Go ahead, press it right now. And, share it with a fellow investor. And if you want to connect with me directly, you can find me on Instagram at Lubari_real estate, or you can go to my website directly at lubari.com. That's LOUBARRI.com, or send me an email, jason@lubari.com. JAISUN@lubari.com. So, thanks for tuning in, and remember, smart investors don't just chase upside, they protect their downside. So see you next Tuesday, everyone. I love you all, and be blessed. Now I got to turn the dang camera on.